of our offshore center, but he will report to you directly. I mean, the people chemistry part is a big deal, and that kind of changed the perception, right? Client security organization now sees these people as their people monitoring day-to-day organizations, and measure is, you see in audit findings, etc. When they do a formal audit, it's almost negligible. Another, healthcare organizations are very sensitive about the healthcare data. There are many privacy laws, etc. So one of the problems we used to face is whenever you work with a healthcare organization, what we call offshore leverage, which means moving work offshore, was very, very low. The way we solved the problem was we came up with a tool, data masking tool, and we designed a process around it and went and demonstrated it to our clients, took some pilot projects, and client got convinced. So now many of the work which we never, offshoring is fundamental to the offshoring organization. If you go and do work on site, it's not very profitable, it's not good for client also. So client actually now does offshore a great degree. So I think measure of success was very simple. Offshore leverage from 20 to 30% went up to 50, 60, 70%. So those are a couple of the things which are very simple we did, and we saw a lot of very strong results.
One of the problems that we see with most of the organizations is the multiplicity of audits. Right through the year, the complaint that we have from the service providers is that there is some audit or the other that's happening, and we really don't have time to do business. We only keep talking to the auditors. And that's when one of these organizations, we agreed to partner with one of these organizations to address this problem. What we did was list down the various drivers for security on one side, and we discovered that about 80 to 90% of the control requirements are common across, be it GLBA, PCI DSS, HIPAA, you name it, are common across each of these drivers. So what we did was to try and isolate these drivers and build that into a very strong, robust audit plan for the organization, and put a lot of rigor and periodicity for these audits. And that was an exercise that was conducted very objectively right through the year. And for each of these requirements, there was an incremental piece that was done along with the space piece that was given to the auditors coming in. And the organization was very happy with this entire process. But the key is to make sure that there is a lot of objectivity and rigor into these regular audits. If that happens, this can be the base over which we can build for any of your regular audits.
As an outsourcing organization, one of the things that we do is give access to our service providers to come in and access the network. So that brings a lot of productivity to the engagement, because they are on your network, they're on your email system, they're on your enterprise chat system where you can stay in touch, and they can, develop systems and then, deploy and test and stuff like that. But it also brings a whole host of issues, because you're giving access to the same network that your employees are on, and you have your data on which you don't want to share with your outsourcing partners. Now, the way we dealt with this problem was, and it wasn't like done in a day or a month, it was done over the years, was, first of all, we had to contain the problem. The problem exists, right? You cannot get rid of this problem because you're giving access to your network. So in containing the problem, you don't want to be dealing with 150 outsourcing organizations and their networks. So we developed a formal program of choosing a handful of outsourcing partners who have the scale, the people, process, and technologies to be able to be certified as people and companies who can have access to your networks. And then we work with these partners to build the ecosystem where they ring fence our engagement physically from network standpoint, from rest of their organization. And then we have a formal process of certifying them and then recertifying them year on year. So they use the same standards that we use. They use the same antivirus program that we use. They use the same network standards that we use. And then we control the access to the network from the service providers one. So I think the main factor here was containing the issue in terms of developing partners, and also, making sure that they have the gold standard in terms of process and people, and then they follow the same security standards that we do. And then we have a formal audit process for recertifying each one of them year on year. And this was done at the corporate level, and every business unit just follows the standards that the corporate sets.
Thank you.
Okay, I think when it comes to tackling challenges, we looked at it from a couple of perspectives. One is your sphere of control. So if you look at your own employees or the people whom you offshore to is within the sphere of control in terms of how we can define security within our own organization. So in this particular area, what we did was we went through what I say as the model of A and T and R, which is more like awareness, tracking, and then recognizing. So the first level is to create awareness. You do it at various levels. One is through mandatory trainings, certifications. That's one route which we took. The other route is the fund route, which the person from Partney explained, right? So create some informal groups, which we internally call them as communities of practice. They come together, conduct events, which basically make it fun to learn, but at the same time, edge security and responsibility more into their heads in a much better manner. So this is more on the awareness part. On the tracking part, we have more like a control review process, which is kind of spread through the year across various sections of the organization. And again, the reviews are based on risk assessments. It's not something like one size fits all. So it's more like if the app has a much more risk, then your review mechanism there is much more stringent. And if the risk is much more lower, then you actually scale down the review that way. The third part is recognizing both in the positive and negative way. When I say the positive, I think all of you understand, recognize people for a good job, incentivize it. And the second is recognize that sometimes we have a problem, because after you do all the awareness and tracking, you might get to know that, yeah, there is a problem and then we need to tackle it. So we go through the same cycle again. So we established some baseline metrics a few years ago. And after going through the process, we have been finding that the metrics have been improving year over by year. And what we also do is kind of set targets, which basically will make sure that people have something to work towards. The second is on the sphere of influence, which is outside of our organization. So when we talk about regulatory bodies, there is a great chance for all of us to participate in shaping up some of these acts that are coming through. So the recent one is the IT Act, where I would say the Confederation of Indian Industries actually sought inputs from most of the industry people. I'm sure most of you would have got into it, participated. That's something which all of us can get into and influence. So we could provide a lot of input there, and we were happy to see some of our suggestions have been put into force through the Act. So it's good to see that solicitation happening in terms of understanding what the industry needs and trying to incorporate it into the Act, which is kind of a best practice, I would say, not just done by us, but I think overall by the ministry which formulated the Act. And my only request is, we would need more participation there. So in the whole discussion forum of the emails which I was seeing through, it was like